Are you a leader navigating burnout, doubt, or growth? Welcome to the Ripple Effect Leadership Podcast, where intentional leadership creates lasting impact. Hi, I'm Jen Brown with my co-host Hugo Rodriguez, and we're diving into real leadership stories and practical insights to help you lead with clarity, courage, and connection. Because we believe great leadership creates positive ripples at work and in life. Hello to our listeners and viewers. I'm Jen Brown, the founder of Journey of Grace Coaching and a leadership coach, as well as a former U.S. diplomat where I had the pleasure of serving with my good friend and colleague, Hugo Rodriguez.
Thank you so much, Jen. As Jen mentioned, my name is Hugo Rodriguez, a former diplomat with 25 years developing leaders around the world. Now I am also a leadership coach and a professor of practice in leadership at Hampden-Sydney College. So, Jen, I know what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, you do.
Yes,
I
I do.
am so excited, Hugo, for you to share with us some, let's call them extreme leadership lessons that you recently got to experience.
Yes.
Tell us
Yeah,
about
for
this.
sure. So, top line is one of the really great opportunities I have at Hampden-Sydney is to teach leadership to young men, and we do a trip in the summer. It's a class called Expeditionary Leadership, where we take 10 students to the Sawtooth wilderness in Idaho, which is kind of northern Rockies. And we spend 10 days hiking in the wilderness, and we use that hiking framework to expose these young men to leadership responsibilities and leadership opportunities and challenges. So we just got back. We had an amazing experience. I'm super jazzed. This is my first time doing it. I got to do it with the director of the Wilson Center, a gentleman named Vinton Bruton, who is a former Marine and a real outdoorsman and a really great leadership professor. And so I was this was all new to me. I'm not an outdoorsman. I have never really gone camping more than one night on the ground. And he was not only a great professor for the young men who were on this trip, but also for me. And he taught me a lot. And then together we taught leadership and wilderness first aid. And well, I'll tell you all about it. But I want to start by saying, as you and I both know, teaching is kind of using smart people and the things they've written, and you kind of take those things to a student and say, here, this is a smart person on leadership, and here's what he's written, right? And I use in my leadership classes Harvard Business School cases, and I use articles written by smart people to kind of give leadership frameworks. Mm-hmm. And that is good up to a certain point, right? Because you can read what other people have said things about leadership, but then it's really on you to kind of internalize that. And as you and I also know, as mentors, you go the next level and you kind of say, well, here are some of the experiences I've had. Take what you will from that and maybe apply some of those things to your challenges. But I think for me, and I think also for you, the reason we coach is because we need to get a layer deeper than that.
Yes.
Right? It's entirely one thing to say, here's something smart that somebody smart has written. Here's some experiences that I've had. But when you coach, you dig into the experiences that your client has had, and you talk about what they've tried, what else they might try. You are basically opening up for them their own toolkit and saying, what else have you got in there? Pull something else out. Let's try that. And let me walk with you on that journey. Let me help you be accountable. But if teaching is sharing what smart people have written, and coaching and mentoring is sharing the things that you and I have experienced, then coaching is really helping to analyze the experiences of our clients. The thing I loved about our experience this summer was we actually helped these young men have leadership experiences. leadership you kind of have to learn, at least in the beginning, by doing, right? By being
Yeah.
exposed to these challenges, being under pressure, having to make leadership decisions, and then analyzing the decisions afterwards. And that's where the coaching can kind of come in and say, how did that work? What outcomes would you have preferred? You know, all of those great coaching things. And so for me, like this expeditionary leadership class was kind of the perfect experience because you aren't really forced to develop new leadership skills until you're in a crisis where you're up against it and what you have on board isn't working. So you have to try new things. And this was really what that experience was all about. Yeah, it was fantastic.
So I'm so curious. You and I have chatted a little bit about this experience, and it sounds like it was a lot of how to form a team, who shows up as the leader, who steps into that role. What do you do when the team's not gelling? What do you do when the crisis hits?
Yeah.
All of these great opportunities. Walk us through, first of all, what did these young men think about this experience? And did they connect the dots right away with leadership?
You know, that's a really good question. And there were 10 guys on the trip, and I think, like with anything in life, some got it earlier, some got it kind of midway through, and some kind of got it towards the end, right? And there are different gradations to kind of what you understand about leadership. I think most young people come in thinking that leadership is, well, now I've got a title, so you've got to do what I tell you to do. And you and I both know how that falls apart very quickly, right?
Very,
So
yeah.
I think it just kind of depends on, like, so we had some guys who are rising sophomores, so they're early in their college career. We have some guys who are rising seniors who are later in their college career. And those each year at that age gives you a whole bunch of new experiences. So some of them kind of have seen some of this before and some of them haven't. But yeah, it kind of comes in waves. So as you mentioned, each day we select a leadership team. The leadership team includes the leader, the deputy, the medic, and the navigator. And they work together to plan how that day is going to go. Generally, it is, we're going to move from the camp we're in to the camp we're going to. There are certain activities that we need to accomplish en route to that camp. And then when we get there, here's how we envision sort of getting the camp set up and what is going to happen in the evening. Each evening, once we're kind of set up and the day is done, then Director Bruden and I would sit with the guys and we'd do a debriefing session. And the guys would be able to talk about, first, from the leadership and the leadership team, how they feel the day went. From the followers, right? How did they think the day went? What went well? What didn't go well? So you're kind of getting feedback on your recent leadership experience. And then we also took along a couple of books, one called The Emergency Mind and one Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, to help contextualize leadership and your professional development and your personal development and all of those things. So each night we would also do a class around the readings. And then at the completion of that class, Director Bruden would announce who the leadership team was for the next day, and off they'd go to planning the next day's journey and events. Just to give you an idea of some of the things that, some of the challenges we encountered along the way, some of these routes were pretty arduous, right? They could be anywhere from 4 miles with 1,000 feet of climb in a single mile to 12 miles with a lot of up and down, a lot of stream crossings. Sometimes the maps didn't resemble the actual trail. And so you'd be following your map and you'd find, wait a second, this doesn't look right. We're lost. Now what do we do? And you have to figure out, okay, using the resources I've got, how do I relocate myself on the map? So the leaders of the day with their leadership team, they would encounter all of these different challenges. And our debrief sessions were really interesting, really good conversations about how things went. And over the course of the week, those conversations also evolved into how the followers can help leaders be better.
Ooh, that's
and
pretty powerful.
right? Isn't that powerful? Yeah. Early on in the week, the followers thought their job was to critique the leaders and sort of tell them what didn't go well. But as we got further into the week, the followers would say, here's something to consider, right? Here's a way to think about this that might work better for you in the next role. Which I thought, all right, that is what you want out of good followership, right? Followers need to be part of the solution, not just dragged along kicking and screaming. So yeah.
You have a group of young men. You're all carrying your gear. So
all gear, 50-pound packs. So everything, we needed for the whole week, we had to carry in with us. And then, over the course of the week, we'd be eating down our food supplies, and it got a little bit lighter through the course of the week. But yeah, everything we needed had to be on our backs.
So I'm curious, like, how did this setting impact the team building, the followers critiquing the leaders, evolving into, oh, maybe we're partnering here, I can help you be better. Like, how did you see that shift in the camaraderie?
So again, I think most leaders start by saying, I'm going to lay out a plan and everybody's going to follow that plan.
Okay.
And as you know from your leadership roles, like, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So blisters, right? The very first day, we all set out, we want to set a really hard pace because in the leader's mind, he believes he's getting judged by how quickly and seamlessly he can get the team to point B. Well, you've got blisters. Now you have to slow down, stop, and dress those blisters. Now you have to figure out how to rearrange the packs so that they're more portable, right? The very first day, you're getting your packs all out of whack and you got weight on one side. And so everything has to kind of be reassessed. As I mentioned, some of these days you had big inclines. Yeah. So when you're thinking, well, we need to walk at this pace, and then you hit a hill like that, oh, wait a second, now it's going to slow down. Not everybody on the team can hike as fast as the leader thinks he might be able to, or the team should be able to. Let me tell you, they're dragging this 60-year-old carcass behind them. They learned right away, if they didn't slow down to my pace, they were going to leave me off the back. So they got smart. They put me at the front, and they made, they could then pace off of the fastest that I could go. But all of these things kind of become inputs that the leader has to consider that they didn't at the start of the day, and they have to start factoring that in. And they start to realize that all of the followers maybe aren't as on board. We've got guys with different levels of experience, and everybody's a critic. And back in the line, behind you, there's some muttering, and why did we go that way? And can't we just quickly walk across this stream? Do we have to put on our water shoes? All of those things, right? And so leadership, they are able to experience pretty quickly that leadership isn't just the glory of the big title. Leadership is, as one of my favorite books talks about it, leadership looks like stinky feet, right? You have to go and inspect everybody's blisters to see how they are able to progress. Some guys have never been under the pressure of carrying that pack, and so every step of this thing is complicated, and you're only as fast as your slowest, least experienced guy. So how did that start to show up at the end of the day, right? My sense was pretty harsh criticism from the peanut gallery when we sat down around the fire at the end of the day. It seemed like the followers were pretty quick to go with what didn't go well, and not a lot of constructive advice or not a lot of like introspection from the followers. Like, I could have done this better to help the leader succeed,
Ah,
right? That was a fairly common refrain in the first half of this trip.
so this opens up two questions I have. One, as the followers were named as leaders, I'm curious if there became part of that conversation at the end of the day. Like, now that I'm sitting in this seat, here's what I see, and here's what, wow, I didn't have that awareness. Right. And then,
Yeah.
two, the second part, you named a leadership team. And so when you think of your stakeholders on the leadership team, I'm curious how they worked together to also shape the day.
So I'll answer the second question first. And I
Okay.
really felt like the leadership teams, I was really pleased. I was really proud of the way they supported each other on the leadership teams. Didn't happen every single time, but most of the time it did. And when there was clearly like an imbalance in the level of experience on the leadership team, you might expect to see the pace setting leader who's got more experience kind of dragging the other people on the leadership team who don't have as much experience, kind of dragging them, berating them, whipping them forward. And I did not see that. I saw that
Mm.
pretty quickly the leadership team got the concept that we're all in this together. And there was, you know, eventually a dawning that actually the whole team has a role in us succeeding. And we kind of have to bring everybody into some of these conversations. But I was really pleased with the way that the stronger elements of leadership team tended to bolster the weaker elements of the leadership team to bring everybody up to a uniform and a
Mm.
higher level. Your first question was, what happens when, the leader who got criticized on day 2 becomes a follower on day 3, and the criticizing follower on day 2 becomes a leader later
Yeah.
on. And there might have been a little bit of that. Well, now it's my turn to criticize the leader, right? Like, you were unafraid to poke my eye when I was the leader, so I'm going to be unafraid to poke your eye. Part of the I think the unfair paradigm that the professors, created was, it stems from the fact that we are trying not to intercede. Like, really, this is not really a coaching or a mentoring scenario. This is allowing them to experience it more scenario. So
Mhm.
we both tried. I think Vinton was more successful than I was, to just kind of keep your hands off and let it develop, right? But every once in a while, I couldn't help myself, and I'd say, "Hey, what, what's going on here? Why aren't you doing this, right?" Or, "Here's a
Mhm.
suggestion," But because we were largely hands off, the way we kind of framed that feedback session, I think, unfairly tilted the conversation towards criticism as opposed to a more self-reflective model. And I think
Mm.
that started to develop later in the week. If I could be more specific, we tried to gently turn that criticism feedback loop at the end of the day to, what could we, big we, team we,
Mm.
have done better, as opposed to what could the leadership team do better, right?
Yeah.
And the key piece of this is, followers are the most important part of the team. They can set the tone, they can help the team succeed, or they can help the team fail. And the leader
Mhm.
needs to do the right things, but so do the followers. And so by changing the tenor of that conversation, by launching it with different prompts, I think we tilted it slightly enough that people start to realize, oh, wait a second. This isn't the role to try to, you know, criticize the leadership team. we all bear that responsibility. And so here are some things that I could have done better to help my leader succeed today, right? That became a much more helpful conversation.
Yeah.
And then let me just, I'll let a little bit of the cat out of the bag on this. We had some rough days where leaders did not feel like they had a lot of support. And finally, not only that they didn't have support, but that there was some infighting within the team and some cattiness. And so finally, we had a leader who came to the two professors and said, would you guys mind eating dinner alone tonight? Because I think we really need to have a conversation amongst ourselves. And it's just like that, for me, that is worth the whole cost of this trip. When they basically realized that, oh, wait a second, this is on us. There is no cavalry here. Like, we own this. We need to do the things that we need to do to make this whole thing work better. And so while Vinton and I kind of had dinner off by ourselves in a separate part of the campground, these guys really went at it hammer and tongs, and they built some new norms amongst themselves that allowed them to both be more honest and more humble, right?
Yes.
As followers. And they really, like, they had it out. Well, and I'll tell you one of the ones that is a fairly interesting norm that they built for themselves. If someone is too self-deprecating, in other words, says, like, let me give you an example if I can come up with one. Something like, yeah, I really blew that. I made that mistake. That's on me. I'm terrible. Blah, 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 blah. They're like, you have to give me 20 push-ups, and at the top of each push-up, you have to say, I like myself. And so, because
This
apparently,
almost sounds, the other professor was in the Marine Corps, right?
we were off to ourselves. We had like no idea they were doing this. Yeah. But because they identified that kind of self-deprecation as not constructive for their team norms, that was one of the team norms they put in. And there were a series of them, and that one may sound like more on the kind of less core side, but the other ones were really core things. Like, well, how are we going to criticize constructively? How are we going to hold ourselves accountable individually and as a team? And this was, I'm going to say, like halfway through the week, let me say. But they were, I mean, Vinton and I were waiting, and we made it clear that we're kind of like waiting for them to form up as a team, which was kind of delayed. And we're not, like, that can happen with the team. They didn't, they were individually the strongest group that Vinton's ever taken out to the wilderness, which also may contribute to the challenge of forming up as a team because we had such strong individual performers. But they took it on themselves to storm into a better, more cohesive unit. And you could see the effects of that immediately. And that was like, you see kind of the trajectory as a gentle incline, and then all of a sudden you have this inflection point where the team really jumps forward as a cohesive unit, and entirely their action. Like, they did it on their own. They did it their way. It worked for them. It was impressive to see. It was amazing.
So when you were talking about this, it brought me back to the Tuckman model of team development, right? You have a team that forms, they storm, they rumble,
right,
in the mud maybe. Then they start to norm, they start to find their rhythm and figure out each other's personalities and strengths and so forth. And then they get to that level of performing.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. That's what happened, right? So they had done that, a little bit of that forming over the course of the first 3 days. But then in the middle, where they did this storming session, it really gave them the chance to say, okay, these are the things we did not like about the way we formed. So now we're going to reset the terms of how the team works. That's your norming, right? Now, can I tell you about the performing? Because it really turned up.
Yes.
It totally turned up the performance. So let me jump you forward to the last day. So one of the things we are taking advantage of in this scenario, before we ever went out to Idaho, Vinton invited in a trainer to get us all certified in wilderness first aid. Basically, in Vinton's experience, if you're out in this sort of environment, it's inevitable that you're going to run into people that are having trouble, or you may have trouble yourself, medical trouble, physical trouble, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so wilderness first aid gives you a framework. You're never going to be, the guy choppering somebody out, but you can help stabilize a situation until help arrives. So we all had this training. Vinton's model is then we get out there, he's going to keep giving you scenarios to practice those skills. And so he'll develop this scenario where the guys will be hiking, they'll come on to him or I acting like we are in distress in some way. And it's on the team to figure out what is the distress, what is the response, do you call in help, all of those things. And we did this throughout the week. And we had mixed results early on during the week, but after that storming session and after some kind of real intensive work by Vinton, the guys built the framework. They had a mental framework for how to do this, and it was a lot firmer, a lot more solid. So we get to the last day, and Vinton says, okay, this is my last chance to really give these guys a hard one. So he develops this whole scenario where he and I kind of leave camp, and then I come staggering back into camp with this tale of, a tree fell on us and my buddy's up here and he's passed out. I think he's had a head injury and I can't move my arm and my leg really hurts, and they have to figure out what's going on with me. They have to find him in the woods. They have to figure out what's going on with him. They have to communicate with authorities. So we'll work out a modality where they're actually communicating through us, so they're not actually talking to the rangers, but we give them feedback. Like, they send a message, we write out a message back to them. So these guys worked for several hours to get us onto first to stabilize our injuries, get us onto stretchers, stretcher us up to the trail and down half a mile to a trailhead. They work on this all morning and they're getting us out of this scenario. They did a brilliant job. It was just beautifully done. You could see the development, the delta from where they were when they started to where they were on this last day was just huge. And we all we're all very excited about how well it went and how they worked really well together and how they kind of zeroed in on the problems, identified them, anticipated what could come next. They were on top of it. Really great scenario. So we finish it up. We now have probably 3 miles to the trailhead. We've been out in the wilderness for 10 days. We have eaten pretty much all the food we took out there with us. Last day, we're down to gummy bears and power bars, and that is it. And a few packets of dried oatmeal and just the detritus at the end of a long hiking trip. But we're 3 miles from the trailhead. There, we have our rental cars. We have the campsite for the night. The idea was to hike the last 3 miles, set up camp, and then take the cars down a mile down the road to a lodge where dinner would be cheeseburgers and milkshakes. And let me tell you, we are all very excited about having a real meal at the end of this. So we start hiking and we get about 1.5 miles and it starts to rain. We figured we're almost done. A little rain was not going to hurt us. So everybody kind of throws their rain gear on and we're hiking on. The rain's getting harder and harder. And if you can picture, we're hiking on the last little bit of this trail. We're inside the last mile. On our left-hand side is a creek. On our right-hand side is this kind of steep mountain bank going up, up, up. And as we get to within 1/2 mile, maybe even a couple 100 yards from the place where the trail cuts across the creek on a bridge and ends in the campground, the noise level is going up, and the rain is pouring down, and it sounds like a freight train around us. And we're kind of all looking at each other like, what's that noise? Why is that noise? And Vinton and I are at the back of the group. And Vin says, I need to get up to the front. I got to see what's going on here. So he works his way up to the front, and I follow him. And as he passes the guys, he says, if anything happens, we are running up that mountainside. So be ready. And so he passes all the guys. He gets to the front of the group, and he's sort of surveying what's going on. And just at that moment, like up ahead of us, beyond where we think the bridge is, we hear this crash. Everybody turns and looks at it, and it's a tidal wave of a flash flood blowing through, coming down this creek. And it is like full of trees and boulders. The thing's just marching down through the woods, just blowing through the woods. And Vinton, without a hesitation, is like, run up the hill. Everybody just turns on a dime, goes shooting up the hill, right? We were marching as fast as we could. We got up about 30 yards, 40 yards, and Vinton yells, drop your packs. Everybody drops their packs. I'm struggling to get my pack off. Vinton's like, get your pack off. I can't find the snaps. I finally drop it. We continue up another maybe 100 yards up the side of this hill. At that point, we're well above the flash flood, and we can just watch, Mother Nature's fury as this flash flood just blows through this valley, right? Boulders and downed trees and mud everywhere. And we're sitting like all huddled in the rain, drenched. Behind this front, it's just freezing cold. We can see our breath. Everybody's kind of shivering. So we do what we have to do, right? We're monitoring the water coming in. We're monitoring the flood in front of us. A couple of other hikers show up, and they're also stranded. We are probably, you could probably almost have thrown a rock as far as the campground was from us. We're way up high on the side of this mountain, and we can see the valley in front of us. But as far as we can see, it's all water. And we, worked together with this other hiking couple. Our guys pooled up all the water that was left, all of the water that we'd carried, because we were almost at the end, so we didn't have full water reserves. They pooled up all the food that was left. They basically were like, okay, we're going to end up camping here on this hillside overnight unexpectedly. Let's see what we've got. Divvied up the water. They got a fire going to dry clothes and dry boots because we were soaked. They set up a makeshift camp on the side of this mountain. All of these, like, they did all of it as a team. It was fabulous, right? Fabulous. And around, like, the flood hit us about 5 p.m., more or less. Around 7:30, 8 o'clock, these two outdoors people, I would say, from the lodge, like, come straggling across the mud field and get up to us, and they're like, we heard you were here. Throughout this whole thing, I should say, Vinton was on the Garmin, communicating with rangers, communicating with first responders and all of that. So they knew we were together, we were safe, we were above the flood zone. But then they had an idea that we were out there. So anyway, these guys show up. They've struggled through the mud, like they're chest deep covered in mud. And they're like, you can get through, but it's pretty deep. The two hikers who were with us, they said, well, we only have day packs. We'll go with them. We, of course, still had our big backpacking packs. So we decided to spend the night, and we figured, we'll get up in the morning. We'll be able to have a better read on what the mess looks like, and we'll be able to get across. So guys, they jumped to it. They set up the camp for the night. We were all ready to go. We did this kind of stone soup dinner where we kind of pooled everything we had, and everybody got like 2/3 of a power bar, a handful of gummies, and a packet of oatmeal. And it was awesome. But it was probably, for me anyway, it was my favorite meal of the whole trip. Like, scraping it all together with the guys and making it work was amazing. Around 10:30 at night, another hiking guide shows up with a local sheriff, and they say, look, there's rain in the forecast for tomorrow. The water's probably as low right now as it's going to get. We really recommend you guys work your way across now. We'll lead you, but even though it's dark, this is probably our best shot. So,
Wow.
they're the locals, and they had the better understanding than we did. The guys, an amazingly short amount of time, packed everything. We were able to kind of hike our way through. It was really, the mud was maybe knee deep in places, but it was just, you couldn't tell where the boulders were. So it was a bit of a struggle getting through this zone. But we all get through. Long story short, the lodge let us camp there that night and gave us access to showers, which we hadn't seen in a week. And they took amazing care of us. I have to give a shout out. Sawtooth Lodge, those people are amazing. Christy Heinrichs at the Sawtooth Lodge took such good care of us. The whole team there was really supportive. Boise County sheriffs were amazing. We got out the next day to back over to the campground. Our rental cars totally destroyed, picked up by the flood and flung down it's amazing. But Idaho Search and Rescue came out the next day with a sheriff's van, and they took us all into Boise and took really good care of us. The guys behaved like a team at the highest level. Like, they performed beautifully. It was so amazing to see just how they supported each other, supported Vinton and I, how good they were, both under pressure, and then also once we were past the pressure, they behaved like the gentlemen that they are, and it was really a great, a little scary end to our camping expedition, but it's kind of the best possible capstone to an expeditionary leadership class. They got the chance to show that they had learned all of the stuff, and they put it to work in the best way possible. So, I'm still buzzing. It's been a week since I've been back, and I keep thinking back to the individual things these guys did over the course of the week, and just what amazing men these are, and the great things they're going to do in the world. Yeah. It was awesome. It was awesome.
So much. First, I just want to say I'm so grateful that you and the whole team there are okay. Because what really stands out to me is if anything in that equation had been a little different.
Yes, indeed.
Right?
Yeah, right.
If the morning scenario had gone, a little later.
Or sooner. If we had been 10 minutes further up the trail, we may have been standing right where that plug blowout. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I also have to give just tremendous credit to Vinton, because he is a great leader with tremendous outdoor instincts, and they showed up all through the week. It wasn't just that last day, but he's always thinking ahead. He's always in the moment, very present, and he's anticipating, and he is on the spot. And this was the moment when it really mattered, and he reacted in just the perfect way, got everybody off the X, and the gentlemen with us, the young men, reacted instantaneously, and they reacted well. So you're right. It could have gone so much worse.
And I think that's it. And I love that you use the word reacted, because in a crisis mode like that, that's where all the training and preparation comes into, where reaction is that go-to in a way that is intentional, right?
Exactly.
Otherwise, reacting to me can sometimes have a different form, but reacting in a crisis, when you have been training, you are going in and doing what you need to do. And if these young men hadn't gone through that storming and norming phase earlier,
exactly,
they wouldn't have acted the way they did.
Exactly. Yeah, and they each, as a team, they each took little leadership roles, right? I shouldn't even say little leadership roles, because that's what a great team does, right? They fill in the void. They do what has to be done. They're kind of aware of both the high level stuff and then the detail stuff that's got to get done. And we saw them
Yeah.
doing both of those things on that last day, right? Taking on the roles to get it all done, to keep the greater good in mind and push forward. And it was
Mm.
like, Vinton and I have had conversations about this, and you know, inherently, if you are going into a wilderness scenario, you're exposed to risk. That's kind of why you do it there. You want to turn up in a controlled way the the upsides and the downsides, because you can't teach leadership in a classroom. You cannot give them the experiences in a classroom that you can give them when they're out there and the stakes matter.
Right.
Now, I think what Vinton does incredibly well is manage risk, anticipate, at no point, and even when we're running up the side of the mountain, did I feel unsafe. Like, I have to say, he had laid out a plan and we executed the plan, and there was a margin for error, and we had distance and we had elevation, and like all of that was kind of, that was our controlling the risks.
Mhm.
But you have to be exposed to some level, and hopefully it's a small level, and hopefully it's a manageable level of risk, but you have to be exposed to it to understand how to lead under pressure.
Mm. I'm really curious. What did the young men share with you after all of this?
uh, I think the universal feeling was like, oh my gosh, that was close. And also, we did it right. Like, there was a
Mm.
sense of, like, I don't want to say, unwarranted pride. It was justified pride. And it wasn't like pride in the individual, it was
Yeah.
pride in the team. Like, we we faced a real challenge. We faced something that, under different circumstances could have been life threatening. We reacted appropriately. We looked out for each other. That is something to be proud of. I think that they felt that. They felt that sense of a job well done, a hard-earned job well done, and that's just a great feeling. You chase that your whole life.
That's right. That's right. That sounds like purpose coming to life right there, Hugo.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me tell you, like my level of just incredible commitment and purpose around not just this trip, but around teaching leadership, around being part of the mission at Hampden-Sydney College is like off the charts. You and I talk about finding your purpose, and I think we both found it for many years in the Foreign Service. We had a mission set that gave us meaning, and we fully committed to that, right? That was just an amazing, amazing opportunity and an amazing experience. For me to find something that I love as deeply as that here in my like third quarter is just such a joy. And I'm deeply indebted to the folks at the college for giving me the opportunity to do this. I cannot express enough my debt to Vinton for taking me along on this. Like, to take a newbie into the backwoods the way he did, and to be so generous with his time and his experience, his incredible patience, not just with the guys, but with me. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And to get that opportunity at this point in my life, I'm blessed. I'm so incredibly blessed and jazzed, and cannot wait to see what these young men do with that, and to get back to classes this fall, just a couple weeks from now.
That's right. That is right. Such a powerful story. Thank you for sharing your experience, these lessons. What would you say is the takeaway that you want our listeners, our viewers to really take to heart?
There's a couple. right? And I'll start with the personal one, which is like you are never too old to learn new things. Like jump in with both feet. And I'm not just talking about learning how to backpack in the wilderness, but you've probably heard me say for years, like I could never be a college professor. It takes kind of confronting that sort of fear of the unknown and jumping in to find your calling, right? And I feel like it's a little bit late to say I found my calling. After 25 years of doing something I love, which really was my calling, I found another one. So you can't be afraid to pivot and to try something new, right? That would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is, like, you learn leadership by doing, right? Never forget that leadership is trial and error. And we can read all the books and we can talk about all the frameworks and the models. And I think those are useful. But you kind of have to step into it and learn it by what works and also learn it by what doesn't work. And the best lessons and the lessons I think these guys learned most deeply came from the things they tried that didn't work. And then regrouping, storming, hashing it out, learning from each other, and trying something new. And that, in a nutshell, I think is how I learned leadership, right? I didn't learn it from a book, and I didn't learn it by myself. I learned it with you, and I learned it with my teams, and I learned it by being humble and being able to say, I could have done better there, and I would welcome your insights on how I can do better, right? That willingness to keep failing and keep standing up and dusting yourself off and asking for help, I think that is the key to learning meaningful servant leadership. So those are the two things I took away from it. This was a tremendous experience. I hope I have the opportunity to do something again like this. But you don't have to learn leadership in the Sawtooth wilderness. You just need to, tighten your belt and go after it and not be afraid to fail. I just end by saying how proud I am of these guys. If they ever see this podcast, and I hope they will, just know that they have my admiration for what they went through and how well they shouldered that burden and carried it forward. And it gives me hope for the future, right? Like these are the guys who are going to lead our communities, and they're up to the task. So thank you. I love this conversation. I really appreciate you.
I do as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Ripple Effect Leadership Podcast. If this episode sparked an insight or reminded you of someone, please share it and help forward the ripple. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review so more leaders can find their way here. You can find us on LinkedIn at Jen Brown-Coach and at HF Rodriguez Jr. and more leadership content and coaching tools at journeyofgracecoaching.com. A quick heads up before you go. This podcast and all content shared by Ripple Effect Leadership is for informational and educational purposes only. The opinions and characterizations in this podcast are our own and do not necessarily represent the U.S. government. This podcast is not a substitute for mental health treatment or professional medical advice. If you are struggling, we encourage you to reach out to a licensed mental health provider or call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You don't have to do this alone.